On today's show, the vibes are not great in Padre land. Sheel Seidler, the widow of the late and great Peter Seidler, has filed a lawsuit against brothers Matt and Bob Seidler for control of the San Diego Padres. Talking about that, what it means for the team going forward, what it could mean for things like Roki Sasaki signing with the team, and a whole lot more down the line. Even if I'm not a legal expert, we're going to talk about it and also talk a little bit about a rumor about Marcus Stroman being linked to the Padres. All that and more. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for the impeccable, the fantastic Thursday, January 9th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or X, whatever you want to call it, as well as Blue Sky. Feel free to check me out on there, and also feel free to check out my other baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, a fantastic website that you all should check out, and also check out their newsletter, which I've been working on, and it keeps you up to date on all things with free agency and the offseason, just kind of giving you the lowdown of what you need to know. So go subscribe to that. It's very, very good. Yeah. Today's going to be a trip, guys. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Go check that out. Today's episode, guys, we got to talk about the bombshell. And, look, it happened early this week. I've only done one episode this week. Remember, we are in the off-season mode, so that's why. And I wanted to wait a day or two before discussing it because I did think that I wanted to hear a response, I think, to the allegations, especially from Matt and Rob. But I think that, and that has come out, and we're going to read a little bit of it. I'm just going to read to catch everybody up, even though I imagine everybody has probably heard about this, especially if you're listening to this podcast. You've probably heard about it by now, but I'm just going to read an excerpt from The Athletic to catch everybody up real quick. Again, this is from The Athletic from Dennis Lin and Evan Drellich. Amid a previously quiet offseason in San Diego, Sheel Seidler, the widow of Peter Seidler, has sued the late Padres owner's brothers in an effort to gain control of the franchise, raising questions about who will run it in both the short and long term. In a lawsuit filed Monday in Texas, Seidler accused Matt and Bob Seidler, two of Peter's 9 siblings, of breaches of fiduciary duty and fraud as executors of Peter's estate and trustees of the trust that controls the Padres. The suit alleges that Sheel Seidler is the sole beneficiary of that trust and should thus become the next control person of the team. The Padres last month announced that John Seidler, another Seidler brother, would be the team's new control person, pending approval by Major League Baseball. Sheel Seidler's complaint claims that Matt and Bob Seidler are attempting to force John's appointment and alleges that the two brothers have irreconcilable conflicts of interest and try to sell trust assets to themselves at far below market prices. The dispute opens the door to questions as to whether the family can reach a resolution while maintaining control of the team or whether a sale ultimately awaits. In a statement posted on X, Sheel Seidler said that the lawsuit was, in quotes, a last resort to protect the Padres franchise and ensure the vision that Peter and I shared for the team will continue. I do not wish to litigate this matter in public, but rest assured I will do what it takes to protect my children, Peter's legacy, and this remarkable ball club, Seidler wrote in the statement. I look forward to a quick resolution so that we can, together, continue the work ahead. Seidler declined further comment through a spokesperson. The Padres said, "We do not comment on pending legal matters." Major League Baseball declined comment. And then we got responses from at least Matt Seidler specifically, also reading from Dennis Lin at the Athletic. In a letter addressed to San Diego Padres corporate partners and fans, Matt Seidler responded Tuesday to a lawsuit filed by his sister-in-law, Sheel Seidler, and emphasized that relocation of the franchise has not been discussed or considered. Which, yes, I didn't mention that in the previous part, but that is one thing that the suit alleges, among many other things, including racism and, like I said, the trying to sell themselves assets below market value, all that sort of stuff, designed to reduce payroll and all these sort of things, right? Sheel and emphasized that the letter was issued a day after Sheel Seidler, the wife of late Padres owner Peter Seidler, sued Matt and his brother Robert Seidler, accusing them of breaches of fiduciary duty and fraud while stating her case to be named control person of the Padres. In quotes, Sheel's claims against Bob and me are entirely untrue, and we will vigorously defend ourselves against them, Matt Seidler wrote in the letter. That said, the false accusations in her complaint will not distract from the Padres organization continuing its great momentum on and off the field in San Diego. Notably, the letter disputes Sheel Seidler's suggestion in her lawsuit that Matt Seidler's decision to nominate a third Seidler brother, John Seidler, as control person may be part of an effort to relocate the Padres. This is completely false. The quote says, "It is also laughable. The San Diego fans are the best in baseball, and Petco Park is the best ballpark in Major League Baseball," Matt Seidler wrote. He added in bold and underlined letters, "To clarify the record without ambiguity, relocating the Padres from San Diego has never been discussed or contemplated." Yeah, look, guys, it's a lot, and I recommend reading the rest of the Athletic story to get more of the response from Matt and whatnot, kind of dispelling, or I shouldn't say dispelling, but refuting the claims allegedly. So basically what I'm trying to say is a lot of hearsay. We've got both sides going on. So, and one of the reasons that I waited was because obviously when this first dropped from Sheel, you get the immediate reaction of everybody because you use the words, the big, buzzwords might be the term I should use here, of relocation, and also some racism allegations were involved as well. Some of those mentioned in the lawsuit, which thankfully there are lawyer people who got their hands on this and were pushing out some of the documents, and there's so many of them that I don't really have time to go through like all of them. Maybe I'll do in a future episode when we get a little bit more about this, but I'm not a legal expert, so it's very difficult for me to get into all of that. But there's a lot going on, like a lot going on. I recommend following, if you're on Blue Sky, Menzria is a Padres person who's a lawyer and whatnot, and they have like the full complaint and they post a lot of things there if you want to dive deeper. I'm only going to go through some of the highlights, but yes, one of those things did include the racism, which I mentioned. Accusing what's her face, Alicia Seidler, which I believe is Matt's wife, of some racism. And there's a lot of stuff going on. People are posting Alicia Seidler's Instagram is now private, but they're posting like videos of her celebrating at a Dodgers game. So basically now everybody's saying, hey, these people are secretly just Dodger people, or at least mostly Dodger people, and they don't have vested interest in the Padres. And that's why I think you've seen a lot of support for Sheel's side of this argument and whatnot. And first of all, I also want to, before we get into that, say, man, it must be tough what's going on right here for both sides and whatnot. I can only imagine what Sheel's going through, losing her husband. And especially one thing that was sad, and this is kind of, doesn't have anything to do with the size of the two, but I did notice that there was one issue noted that they really did not think that Peter's health would be fatal and whatnot, and that they were trying to have a third child. So again, I can only imagine what she's going through and what everyone's going through, frankly, right now. This is a really ugly situation. It stinks that it got this far. It's obviously going to affect the team a lot going forward. And I think that a lot of people have been very empathetic to Sheel's side. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. And I think the first and foremost thing for why everyone immediately jumped on her side, aside from the fact that she filed first, right? And then that we got her public statements first, and then we got the relocation buzzword and whatnot, this racism stuff and what have you. And I'm not going to repeat what was allegedly said. I do think, I will make one note, was interesting. Matt Seidler did not refute that racism was involved, and instead said that Alicia's had some sort of mental things that have come up, some mental issues. So I think that is worth noting without getting too deep into that. But anyway, I think that a lot of people, their reaction to this was, well, that explains the lack of spending, right? And this, again, I'm not saying that one side's right or not, but that is why I think that we've seen a lot of people out of support for Sheel's side of the story, including Jackson Merrill, who there was a post on Instagram that was like some Padres fan account that was like, we stand with Sheel, and Jackson Merrill liked that post, right? So I think that we have a lot of issues going around right now, but it's also important to note that everybody has their own sides and everybody has their own perspectives on things, that everybody has their own potential motivation, incentive, agenda around this. But it is a really tough situation. But again, just from the outside, and this is all my opinion now, considering that this will be the second straight offseason, post Peter's passing, in which the Padres have been very stingy with the money that they've spent. Now, last year, don't get me wrong, we were all thinking, hey, it's the luxury tax, right? They just wanted to get into the luxury tax. That's not too much of a crazy thing. That way you reset it and you don't pay the increasing percentage penalty per year. And they have done that. And then what happens is this year they've been radio silent. So that's where we're at, guys, and it's not great. And we're going to continue talking about it, especially what it means potentially for Roki Sasaki's signing down the road in just a second, guys. But I got to talk to you about one of our podcast sponsors, and that is the good folks over at Rocket Money, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We love Rocket Money. You know why we love Rocket Money? Because they are here to help you, just like all of our sponsors, frankly, on this show. But nonetheless, they are here for you. And I got to talk to you about them because they are fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the thing. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year on average when using all of the app's premium features. It's great. You know, everybody has a couple like subscriptions that they forget about, things that they don't need. And this thing helps you analyze all of that and break down how you can save money for your particular style of life. You know what I mean? So they help you out a lot. It's really, really fantastic. They have a subscription tracker that tells you all sorts of things with their goals feature. You automatically set aside money for the future within the app. No more stressing about budgeting every month. It's great. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go check it out. It's fantastic. And just like that, we are blazing into segment number 2 of this Locked On Padres sad, I think, podcast extravaganza, I would say. Again, this is such a complicated issue. I will note, we were going to talk about Roki Sasaki. He also made the lawsuit in one part of the thing, which I was reading on Blue Sky from that person I mentioned before, who admittedly I had no idea who that person was before this, but one part that I thought was interesting is the significance of Sheel's involvement is well documented, with tangible results that have drawn attention from the press. For instance, a recent column in the San Diego Tribune underscored Sheel's critical role in successfully recruiting players, opining that, in quotes, Sheel Seidler, the former chairman's wife, should be part of the Padres' team that tries to woo Roki Sasaki, given the culture that she and Peter created for the Padres. Like, kind of making it seem like, you know, that like she wasn't already part of it. So I want to talk about that really quickly. Just a little bit of a minor complaint. Some people are wondering, why would you do this now? We're trying to get Roki Sasaki. I imagine that either one of two things are true, is that Sheel and company know there'd be no reason for them not wanting to have Roki Sasaki, because remember, this is a player that isn't being limited by giant budgetary reasons, right? It's international signing money. He's below the age of 25, so he's technically treated as an amateur. So there would be no reason why you wouldn't want to pick up a player like this, right? Especially if it was on the table. It's not like he's going to get a Yamamoto deal, which the Yamamoto deal would go against what is being claimed allegedly, which is that they're cutting back and they want to sell the team or whatever, right? So that would have nothing to do with it necessarily, because of the circumstances surrounding Roki. And also, I just think that, you know, if Sheel cares so much as she is alleging, and if the brothers care so much as they're alleging, they would not, I just don't think it would get to this point, right? And also, I just think that Roki has probably made a decision already and just has not come out yet, and there's some final things being, well, finalized. So, oh my God, it's just, this is so much, guys. Look, when I saw this, my heart was just like, you gotta be kidding me. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me right now. And I guess the too long didn't read version of this is basically that upon his death, named them in charge of his trusts, and that gives them certain powers that they're supposed to use to the benefit of the trust. And the sole beneficiary, allegedly Sheel, and Sheel alleges that they didn't do that and instead use their powers to give themselves more control. It's basically, I feel like, the long-winded way of describing this, right? And it's, oh my God. I mean, there's just so much to unpack. I know some people have been like, you know, I see Sheel Seidler at everything. I do not see Matt and Rob at everything. And you guys will know more about that than me, since I'm not currently stationed in San Diego. Matt and Bob Seidler don't even live in San Diego, right? Like, there is a vibe of like, oh my gosh, this is so rough. Like, there's just so many things about this that really, that you really just reek. And again, the timing of it is what I think was most jarring and most not jarring, most wow, like light bulb turn on. Like, we've been asking for a while now. While the Padres are expected to have a payroll a little bit above 200 million, like expectations like arbitration and some other contracts kicking in and whatnot, it still does say a lot that, like, this team that was basically on the doorstep of beating the Los Angeles Dodgers, and frankly, in my opinion, the best team that was left in the postseason. I really do believe that. I know the Dodgers were great, but I think the Dodgers, with their injuries and what have you, I think that the Padres were a better team. Like, for them to be as good as they were last year, as many memories as they had last year, and for you to just have a completely silent offseason, don't get me wrong, there are some financial things there, but it makes you wonder, right? So I'm sitting here looking at all these different details coming out, and it's freaking rough, man. It's rough. It's really, really rough. And the Merrill Instagram right, all that sort of stuff. The fact that they don't live in San Diego, it's just kind of, it's really gross. And the relocation thing, and I will say that when it comes to the relocation thing, just from my perspective, there's just been a lot of teams that have been relocating lately, and I think that the reason why I'm worried about that being true is just because we keep seeing it happen with teams that aren't necessarily in the biggest place or the biggest market in the world. I mean, look at Oakland. Oakland lost the Raiders and the A's. Look at San Diego before. They lost the Chargers, right? It just feels like you've seen a lot of teams moving away. Heck, even to a degree, St. Louis, right? That counts a little bit. They lost the Rams. Now, I know that the Rams had some history in Los Angeles beforehand, but it's like, dang, like, they won a Super Bowl in St. Louis. Like, that's kind of messed up. It just feels like a lot of teams that if they aren't in guaranteed giant markets that people keep leaving, they're trying to go to Vegas, right? All these sort of things. So, look, it's going to be a long fight, right? I know that some people believe that if Bob and sorry, I am just like I'm a mess right now, guys. What can I say? But if they win, if the brothers win, that we're going to go back to old school Padres in which they barely spend and they're just kind of like viewing it as a business. And then if Sheel wins, it'll be continuing Peter's vision and whatnot. But again, this is a lot of hearsay. And I don't know how quickly this will be resolved. This is the type of thing that could take years. But I don't think that it's going to affect the Padres' recruitment of certain players as much as people might think. I think it could affect them a little bit, but again, I think that Roki Sasaki has probably already made his decision. I think that this is just one of those situations where you have to sit there, your hands are up and you're saying this stinks. I mean, it feels like there's always something going on with this damn team, right? Especially the last few years. There's just always something happening. Every time there's something good that happens, so the season as a total, then you lose to the Dodgers, and then you have this come out. Every time, when they traded for Juan Soto, then you have the Tatis getting popped for PEDs, right? It just adds to a long list of this fan base really has been through it, right? I'm not going to say this fan base has been the worst in all of sports. I think that there are some that have been worse, especially, let's talk about lately. Padres fans have been living pretty good, in all honesty. It's just that it really feels like we're cursed in a sense that every time something good happens, something bad has to counteract it, I think, is kind of how people are feeling right now. It's possible that we reach a point where the money is just not there, even if one side wins, one side doesn't win. It just feels like, I think the worry that a lot of Padres fans are having now is the idea of, like, what if you're forced to sell the team anyway after all of this is done? Because business is really cutthroat. I mean, look at the world, right? Like, it's really rough out here in the business world and whatnot, and the effects that it has on people. I think that, another thing that has been discussed is the marital trust interest in the Padres, like that being cut through or diluted. Sheel's marital trust funds, those being diluted, that's been something that I've seen being floated around. It's a lot. And I will say that the fact that she brought this up now, again, it follows with the timeline of what we've seen with the Padres and the lack of spending is what I'll say. But it also, and by the way, as I'm recording this, it's arbitration, like last day of arbitration day. Adrian Monahan, Luis Arraez, Luis Campuzano, all settling. Shocker, right? Like, with no surprise there. The Padres rarely take any players to arbitration, but I think that back to the case at hand, there's just not much else I have to say because we just don't know everything. And I will tell you that the allegations being thrown out are wild. I mean, I already mentioned the racism. I already mentioned the marital trust. I already mentioned everything. The relocation. I'm worried. I'm really worried. I think this is something that, in the long term, if sorted out, could be good. I think that it could help cement where the Padres are. I think that it could give the team a better standing, and just know what they are. There's no more conflicts and whatnot, and they potentially keep down, even if it's not at the 300 million, handing out huge contracts every year sort of way. That there's just a little bit more steady and there's a focused vision in the long term, and then we're okay. In the short term, though, I think things could get rough. I think you're going to see a lot of things floated out there, and I just think that it's important. Even though I think that I've certainly shared some sides more than others on today's podcast, only because of lack of time. I can't talk only about this. That everybody has a reason for everything being put out places, right? You got to remember that. So. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm just not a legal expert. There are other people who are better at this than me. I mean, heck, there's one part of the lawsuit alleges that they made the players refrain from talking to Sheel. Like, there's all sorts of stuff out there, and it doesn't look great. It doesn't look great, guys. I'm really curious to see how this shakes up. Everybody's going to be watching this. There's just a lot of, my God, man. I mean, even the players and coaches not being allowed. This isn't great, man. This isn't great. It's possible still that Roki Sasaki comes here. I know there was a USA Today report from Bob Nightingale saying that the Padres are a little bit of the favorite right now. And I know that we keep getting reports that are like, yeah, Roki Sasaki doesn't necessarily want the large market. And yeah, I've heard. I was listening to Ben and Woods actually the other day, and they brought up, and I've brought this up multiple times before too, especially because I get a lot of Dodger fans in my comments when they talk about endorsements. I'm like, well, first of all, Shohei Ohtani would have got endorsements wherever he went because he's Shohei Ohtani. Like, it does not matter. He would have gotten big time endorsements. He's just too big, right? Roki Sasaki would be like the 8th most famous person on the Dodgers if he were to sign there, right? Maybe. Like, I guess maybe he can, because of the international, maybe he's bigger than Snell, but you've still got so many players there, right? You've got Freddie Freeman, you've got Mookie Betts, you've got Shohei Ohtani, you've got Yoshinobu Yamamoto, right? Like, it's, I just don't understand this idea, right? Like, that, like, the Padres would just be, you would be completely out on all endorsements. I'm like, you would probably be the most famous player once he gets there, second or third at most, right? So I don't see that. I think that that's a weird thing, and Ben and Woods talked about that. I'm like, he can get his sponsorships, guys. Like, let's not. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? Dodgers fans, enough. You're not the only game in town. But yeah, I imagine we're gonna hear kind of that decision somewhat soon. And again, I want to tell everybody, like, I don't think this is like Roki Sasaki is unfamiliar with what's going on, or there is no sort of preemptive push on this. Especially if I imagine she wants the public on her side. I just doubt that this would be pushed and announced as you're in pursuit of this guy. And you're worried, and there's even the chance, the possibility that it would just sway his decision. He's like, I don't want any part of this. I just don't think that that would happen. And I think that a lot of the on-field things, the good news is, guys, they have a lot of contracts handed out. And we made this point a lot on the show that, like, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Jake Cronenworth, Yu Darvish, Robert Suarez, Joe Musgrove, like, Xander Bogaerts, all these guys, like, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to just disappear, regardless of what's going on, regardless of the lack of spending or plans to cut back on payroll. Like, they kind of have no choice almost to at least just kind of let this play out and whatnot. And again, it is just year 2 following Peter's passing, so we don't want to make too many jumps to conclusions, but I will admit the timing of this, and with Peter's passing, the fact that we have not seen nearly as much spending, and the fact that in an offseason full of a bunch of players, including players that don't cost much, like, let's say the catching situation, like Kyle Higashioka, the fact that you've seen those guys just go, and the Padres are just sitting there, and we're like, what's going on? Where's the left fielder? I get it. I get the frustration. But guys, we're going to continue talking about this, but most importantly, but we're going to also move on and talk a little bit about Marcus Stroman, that rumor, a little bit from John Morosi, being implied by John Morosi of MLB Network, whether or not he's a solid match for the Padres, in just a second, guys. But first, and my apologies for today's episode being a little bit all over the place. It's hard to talk about these things. Not just like, I don't say that in an emotional sense, just like there's so much about this, and there's so much hearsay and so much reports and so much just based on allegations that it's very hard for me to give you guys like an opinion and come through and be like, I have the truth for you today. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit difficult. But before we continue talking about this, I got to take a second to talk to you about one of our legendary sponsors, and that is the good folks over at Game Time. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, I love going to live events. Sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories actually was attending a concert last year. The Gypsy Kings. Shout out to those dudes. They were killing it. It was great. They did like 3 encores too. It was fantastic. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets on upcoming games and whatnot. I may be making a trip to San Diego soon. Maybe in May. So keep an eye out for that if any fans of the show want to say hi. But they have all sorts of cool stuff. They've got super deals. They let you see views from seats and everything, all in pricing, total costs up front, no surprise fees at checkout. They've got you covered on everything, guys. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? It's game time. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Not thriving, we're vibing. Not necessarily thriving, but we're certainly vibing, and not necessarily in the good way, right? We're back here. And again, everybody, your team every day. Keep it locked in here. Going to be giving you updates on everything. Again, I recommend everybody go check out the Lost as much as they can. You'll find it on the internet, whether it be Blue Sky or Twitter/X. You'll find more stuff there, but it's really tough, and it's what I found so sad was just like, what I mentioned this at the top of the show, where it's just kind of, it's really sad. The detail that came out, that they were trying to have a third child, Sheel, and Peter, and that they did not think that his health complications would result in his passing, that they would be terminal or anything like that. Just some complications arose. Like, that's really, really sad. And, what we learned about Peter, and one of the reasons I was so frustrated with some of the coverage of the Padres, especially in the postseason, and being labeled as villains, was just like, I just think that if the Dodgers had an owner who passed away and was also reportedly trying to form a group that was going to prevent, or at least try to fix the situation with the A's being moved out of Oakland, that like, that's all they would have talked about in the broadcast. And they would have been like, wow, like, that's so sad. They got to do it for him. Meanwhile, you don't get a single thing of that when it was being discussed during the playoffs and just national media in general. Instead, we got the sinister sling kind of thing going on. But just, it must really stink, this whole situation. It must stink for the kids, must stink for her, must stink for the brothers. Everything here is just a total just mess. You know what I mean? And again, these are crazy things being alleged, guys. One part in it basically says the Seidler Trust, having generated significant income since November 2023 and the obligation under the trust instrument to distribute net income equality, defendants have diverted trust income to offset payment obligations that would have otherwise required to fund themselves. Defendants have repeatedly refused Sheel's request for required distributions, instead pretextually asking Sheel to first provide household budgets. It's just a mess, guys. Like, I don't know. Like I said, it's just kind of, this stinks, man. It really, really freaking stinks, and I'm upset about it. And you should be too. It just stinks, like I said before. Like, every time there's something good happening with this team, it's like you're required. It's like the Sentry from Marvel. Like, you're required for every good thing. You have to have the Void come back in and destroy you, right? It's just awful. Like, one part of this is alleging that basically the brothers, in an effort to, lack for a better term, oversimplifying, but to basically force her out and whatnot, to kind of defend and get lawyers and advisors and, threaten Sheel into submission, that this might be a part of why they don't have as much money. So again, I remember when I talked about last year that I was like, it's when everyone was talking about like the Padres have no money and whatnot, I was just like, guys, people have money like in Major League Baseball. I just don't believe that rich people like go broke the same way. Like, it's weird, but man, this is really rough. In an effort to end on a somewhat lighter note, let's talk a little bit about Marcus Stroman. This was a rumor posted by John Morosi. It didn't necessarily link them. It was just kind of like an idea that the Yankees are floating Marcus Stroman, and since we know that Luis Ariz has been linked to the Yankees, the not the Charlie Day thing, but like the pin-to-pin connections were like, okay, maybe that's a potential return. I could see it, right? Is Will Warren and Marcus Stroman enough to get Luis Ariz, who, by the way, also just settled arbitration at the time we're recording this podcast, $14 million. It was expected, right? I think that with this whole situation, what will they be able to do with Luis Ariz? I think that you would like to get some controllable players here. And I do think that it would be interesting if they could attach like a Wandy Peralta to this deal, get that deal a little bit off your books, because your bullpen is really good anyway. And I just don't know how good Wandy Peralta is, frankly. That guy just doesn't get any strikeouts whatsoever. Would that make sense? I'll tell you about Marcus Stroman is that Marcus Stroman is he's certainly a personality, right? This has been known for a long time. And I understand that like he had a pretty bad year last year. He wasn't even on the postseason roster for the Yankees, but he's been good before. He's actually been a quality pitcher. If you go by wins above replacement, he's had like 4 above 3 win seasons. He is 34, or is going to be in his 34 aged season. So the age is getting up there for him, but he's very good at procuring ground balls, right? He's almost had a ground ball rate above 50% basically every season of his career, with the exception of last year at 49.2%. It's not at the level as it used to be, right? He used to be like a 60% ground ball generator. But could he be a guy that could just give you innings? Yeah. Look, I mean, the lowest amount of innings that he's delivered was 102, and that was back in 2018. Otherwise, this guy's been pretty automatic. His innings pitched by year, let's not count 2014 and 2015, his rookie years, but 2016 he went 204. 2017 he went 201. 2018 102. 2019 184. Then 179, 138, 136, 154. I just think that this is a guy who, at the very minimum, is just going to provide you relief. And if he's your 4 or 5, right, like in this rotation, I just think that's going to be big. I've talked about how I have confidence that the Padres are going to be able to at least get some value and refine the skills of some of their back-end options, whether it be Randy Vasquez or Johnny Brito or Matt Waldron. I do have some trust that they can get those guys up a little bit, but having a Stroman in there who at least is just a little bit of a proven guy, he would be in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. I could see it. I think it would make a lot of sense, actually. I just wouldn't mind getting a prospect in return, like a Will Warren or an Everson Pereira, to potentially just give them another asset, give them another young, controllable player for Ariz. I can see it. And I think that we've had so much discourse over the past few weeks, frankly, past few years, about Luis Ariz and what his value is. I think that it's just the classic case of, not to invoke football, but like, there's one of the constant like debates in football world is like Justin Herbert versus Tua Tagovailoa. And I think what happens is it's just about framing, right? Where like, I think one of the problems that's happened here is that you'll get a lot of old heads who frame Luis Ariz and they talk about his batting average as like one of the best players in the league. And that's just not true, because he's not well-rounded, right? Like, he does not provide defensive value. He does not provide speed. He does not walk. He does not see a lot of pitches per plate appearance, right? Which is one of the things that we talked about on Monday's mailbag when someone asked about, I like that he can just give us tough at-bats. He can, don't get me wrong, but also past 2 seasons, he's ranked 117th out of 131 qualified batters and pitches per plate appearance. And then I believe it was in 2023, he was like 129 or something like that. Like he's an aggressive swinger. But also at the same time, he does get a little bit too much flack, because this is a guy who has a lifetime batting average of 350 with runners on base, right? Like, he does bring in and does at least get hits. Are they singles? Yes, that's the problem, is they're going to be softly hit singles. So even if the guy's on second base, they're not necessarily guaranteed to come home, right? So that's the issue with Luis Ariz. I think that he, as a player, when you already have a lot of stars in your lineup, he's a good player to have, right? Like, absolutely. You want that bat who's going to go up there and not going to be afraid of any velocity, any sort of off-speed stuff, not going to have any weaknesses in that regard. I wish he was a great defender. That's always been my thing. I'm always frustrated that he's not better defensively, right? That's always been so frustrating to me, because if he was, then he would be an all-star. But again, if you go by FWAR, this is a player that has to basically hit like at an immaculate level in order to be better than a 2-win player, right? Last year, he was a 1.1 win player. Trey Cronenworth was better because he provides better defense, all those sort of things. And Luis Ariz, despite hitting 314, did not do that. And I think that what you have to remember is if he's able to up his on-base percentage and walk, was his 2023 season just an outlier. He slashed 354, 393, 469. He actually ripped a few more doubles than usual. 130 WRC plus, 130 WRC plus with Minnesota the year before that. Are those years possible? Maybe. I mean, he's not super old, right? He's going to be turning 28 this year. Like, this is also not a player that's too old. And I think that is worth bringing up. But in terms of a guy who will be a free agent after the end of the season, do you want to get some value for him right now, save a little bit on the $14 million end, and just get young, controllable guys? I think it could make sense. I like the Marcus Stroman idea. I know he's a super personality and whatnot, but I don't really care about that in baseball. Not too much, right? At the minimum, he's just going to help you out. He's just going to help boost the team a little bit. But I would be lying to you if I said I was 100% confident, 100% feeling safe that trading Luis Arraez is the right option. I just think that there's two wildly different perspectives on this player, and I think that everybody has just been kind of it's becoming a war practically. Some people think this guy stinks, some people think he's the best player in the world, and I think that's what it is. It's expectations. You'll listen to MLB Network and you'll have old heads coming on there saying that this is one of the premier players in baseball. I'm just like, he's not. He doesn't do enough. It actually, I'm sorry that it matters, but yes, it matters that he doesn't draw walks. It matters that he doesn't hit for any power whatsoever. It matters. But at the same time, he was hurt last year. He had a thumb injury, and that probably affected his ability to perform in a giant way. And it's not like the Padres need him to be this top-tier player. He just needs to be a solid batter. It's kind of all you're asking for. So I think it's a result of expectations and being overhyped by you're very boring, you're very out of touch, old head type of perspective on these things. So again, it's tough, but I will just say that rumor, that report, I wouldn't mind getting Pereira, I wouldn't mind getting Will Warren, and I wouldn't mind getting Marcus Stroman. And then maybe if you possibly could, if you attach Wandy Peralta in there, just to get that contract off of the books as well, which for the record, it's not the craziest contract in the world. Let me be very clear. This isn't the Jake Cronenworth or Xander Bogaerts contract or anything like that. But even still, just saving a little bit of money, I think that could go some way. He's getting paid $4.25 million this year. And then he also has a 4.45 player option for next year and 4.45 the year after, right? And considering that we don't know how good he is, that's a problem, right? Like, he was just not very good last year. He doesn't strike out anybody. So again, Marcus Stroman and Everson Pereira, maybe throw him in there. I don't know. We'll have to see. But either way, I'm really excited to see how it pans out. I imagine we're going to get a move at some point, especially with arbitration costs being figured out. I think it's happening, right? I think it's happening. We're going to get some news. And if I'm a fan out there, just hope that Roki Sasaki don't go to the Dodgers, man. As long as that doesn't happen, that's a W. And frankly, it's a W for more than just the Padres. It's a W for the rest of the sport, because it would be such an indictment on Major League Baseball as a whole that if a superstar player where money isn't the preventing factor still goes to the Dodgers or the Yankees, by the way. Yankees wouldn't be great for baseball either. Mets would be kind of fun only because it's like, well, they've been crap for so long. Like, I know they have the most money now, but it wasn't always that way. So in general, just hope that they don't go there. And we're in the clear, guys. So this episode was a mess, but guess what? Lawsuits are also a mess and get ugly. We're going to find out more. Again, go check out on Blue Sky. Username Mensie on there. Men's MENSREA. Go check that out. Menzie at Blue Sky. He posted the whole lawsuit, a lot of the highlights. If you want your own kind of position on the matter, go read the Athletic stories in response that Matt put out, basically refuting the relocation thing, talking and having reasons for it. All that stuff that we didn't have necessarily the chance to get to in full detail on this show. But I imagine we're going to talk about it next week. I was actually going to have a guest on today's show, but they are, last thing I want to point out, they are dealing with the LA fires. So shout out to all of my listeners who are in Los Angeles, have any members in Los Angeles, any family members, any friends. Heart goes out to you. Go check out LA Fire Department. Try and see the LAFD kindful.com, emergency funding alert, see what you can give. Go check out a multitude of resources people have been posting, including celebrities, by the way. That's actually been really helpful. If you just go on Instagram, a lot of them have been posting links to documents that show you disaster relief and what now. It is very dangerous, very scary time, I think, in the world when it comes to things like this and just the climate impact that's happening, and then failures in certain regards. And then most importantly, just tragedy, right? I think that's where we're at. So I just want to just send my thoughts and regards out there to everybody who is dealing with this really scary situation. And Mother Nature's a mess, man. Mother Nature's a mess. It's absolutely a mess. So again, my thoughts and best wishes. I made some donations myself. See what you can give. It's horrible. It's horrible, man. It's really horrible. So I actually had a guest that was going to come on the show, but they're dealing with that right now. So, they're doing okay for the record, but, until next time, everybody, stay safe, stay kind, stay believing. It's weird times indeed, but we'll see you next week. Or I'm sorry, not next week. Today's Thursday. Tomorrow's episode, going to be finally posting my episode that I did with Mr. Miller Thomas, talking about Corbin Burns, just a nice little relaxation from the lawsuit stuff and whatnot, right? We talk about Corbin Burns, the kind of little bit of a paradigm shift in the NL West, and then we have a fun conversation about the most surprising contracts we've ever seen given out, at least in the last 20 years or so. So that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll probably get back. Feel free to send me your questions and comments regarding the lawsuit and whatnot. Please message me. I will answer those on Monday. Any specifics. And frankly, specifics will be very, very helpful for me. That way I can kind of guide the episode along for what's a very tricky and very confusing situation, especially for a dummy like me. So go check that out, guys. But until next time, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies. Take care.